Along with being the UFC's lightweight champion, Islam Makhachev also happens to be one of the strongest fighters out there. Bantamweight superstar Sugar Sean O'Malley talked about Makhachev's unbelievable strength in a recent episode, including his past troubles with USADA. O'Malley also shared some NSFW from his recent trip to Mexico for a stem cell procedure, which resulted in a bizarre NSFW injection. Stay tuned as we give you the latest on both stories. First up, troubles with USADA. Remember when Bobby Green went absolutely berserk after losing the fight against UFC lightweight champion Islam Makhachev back in February 2022? He accused the Dagestani of taking steroids, and that's not all. Bobby actually said he came across a video on YouTube in which Islam can clearly be seen talking about how he used to take unknown supplements at a very young age. There was no mention of steroids or any form of performance enhancers, but Makhachev did say he had no idea what his trainers were giving him. Green didn't hold back one bit though. He actually said Islam has been juicing ever since he was just 10 years old. Imagine if I could do that. We don't know what Bobby was on back then, but if there really is a video of the champion talking about how he had no idea what he was taking early on in his career, then that's a bit of a problem. You can't exactly say Dagestani has been cheating, since he's been tested by USADA before every single fight, but taking steroids prior to fighting at the UFC, now that's a concern. Of course, there's no way to prove this, but Bobby was really upset and thought it was unfair since Islam has managed to add so much strength. Sean O'Malley talked about all the drama in a recent episode of the Timbo Sugar Show and said Russian athletes don't have any idea what they're taking. We're not going to jump to conclusions, but Russian fighters happen to be some of the strongest dudes ever. Next, what's the real story behind getting flagged by USADA? Islam's journey to the lightweight title will never be forgotten, as he spent 7 long years building himself up and climbing the ranks to finally get his shot at Charles Oliveira. And while he might not be undefeated like his mentor, Khabib Nurmagomedov, having just one loss to your name in 7 years is nothing short of greatness. But did you know there's one thing Makhachev regrets more than his loss? It happened shortly after the fight, when he got flagged by USADA for taking an illegal substance. Islam received a USADA violation for taking a drug called meldonium. Believe it or not, it's actually an OTC substance used to treat ischemia, but also has a positive effect on the body's strength and endurance. The 31-year-old said it was given to him by the Russian national team, and he was under the impression that everyone takes it, since it's an average OTC drug. His exact words were something along the lines of how everyone is popping it like vitamins. It was later determined in a trial that Islam was not at fault, and he was let off the hook, since he showed them some prescriptions from doctors advising him to take the medicine. He had heart surgery, and since meldonium helps with blood flow, he needed it to recover. Now, we're not making any accusations here, but Islam initially said it was given to him by the Russian national team. So, where did the prescription come from? Either way, it's nothing serious, since the substance isn't exactly a serious violation or something. Moving on, Sugar didn't exactly share an opinion. To be fair, O'Malley didn't really give us an opinion about the whole USADA episode. He only reiterated what Bobby Green said about the video, and the fact that he was taking it because of a prescription also sort of settles the matter. But he's amazed by how strong he is. And what makes it so much more fascinating is that Islam isn't exactly the biggest guy out there. He has a pretty average frame for someone competing in the lightweight division, but he's built like a rock. He is solid muscle, and watching him fight is one thing. But have you ever noticed how dense his muscles are? It's actually what makes his grappling so effective. Whenever he latches onto you, it's like being dragged down by a panther. Remember his fight against the legendary champion Charles Oliveira? The Brazilian is literally known for being the submission submission king of the UFC. And to be the submission king means having impeccable strength, endurance, and technique. But the way Makhachev dominated him with so much ease is unbelievable. Also, since we're on the topic of his elite grappling, it'll be really interesting to see how featherweight king Alexander Volkanovski negates the threat. He's a pretty strong guy himself, but Islam is a different breed. Bobby actually thinks Russian athletes are bred to dominate, since they're incredibly strong and doped from a very young age. Honestly, we think Bobby was just being salty. He did get a violation, but let's not forget he was cleared after the trial, so it all sort of checks out at the end. Now for a systematic prejudice against Russian athletes. Islam to this day still thinks it was a systematic prejudice against Russian athletes. The Dagestani said almost every team in the competition takes it as a part of their regular nutrition and supplements. It's almost like saying meldonium is popped every morning, along with the other vitamins. But the fact that only he was singled out is a bit strange. Every single team in the competition was taking it, but no one else got flagged. Only the Russian athletes were accused of taking the substance. To be fair, Islam might have a point about only the Russians getting flagged, but at the end of the day, it is an illegal substance. And since it's illegal, it can't be taken if he knows he has a fight coming up at the UFC. But we're glad all of that is behind him now because it really messed with him. While talking to UFC Russia, Islam said getting flagged for the violation actually bothered him more than his loss. He thought his career was on the line and that he'd be handed a ban, but the doctor's prescription really made things much clearer. I was worried because I was given a ban because of that substance. I thought that it would affect everyone on the team. We never had anyone get caught for something. The ban affected me more than the loss. Plus, we don't want to get into this, but don't you think it's ironic how Bobby was suspended for taking a banned substance? He purchased DHEA from Walmart and ended up getting suspended. We're not gonna lie, that's pretty sad. Following up, the good old stem cell treatment. After his controversial victory over Petr Yan at UFC 280, O'Malley decided to treat himself with a good old stem cell treatment to help him get back in the flow. The bantamweight superstar knew he was going to be sore after the fight, and that's why his coach found a company in Tijuana specializing in stem cell treatment. Before we tell you what ended up happening in Mexico, let's just quickly go over what stem cells do. It's just a fancy name for replacing all those damaged tissue cells during intense exercise or fights. Because UFC fighters put themselves through intense training camps followed by a draining battle inside the cage, getting a stem cell treatment significantly reduces the recovery time. And in case you're wondering, no, it isn't an illegal procedure. Anyway, back to the story. When Sugar arrived in Tijuana at the company, he was waiting for his turn when he saw a gentleman sitting, waiting to get a different kind of procedure. Sean's team asked the gentleman what he was there for, and what we're about to tell you might be a bit surprising. He said he was going to get a stem cell treatment for his private part. The gentleman claimed it helped with performance and size. Right then and there, O'Malley decided he also wanted to get the treatment, and it ended up becoming a very bizarre NSFW injection story he shared recently on Michael Bisping's podcast. Up next, it wasn't too painful. O'Malley told Bisping the procedure wasn't too painful. Well, he called it fun, and honestly, we find that really hard to believe, but yeah, we'd rather not get into the details. Michael asked the bantamweight title contender whether it actually had an impact on the performance, and while the 28-year-old couldn't really comment on that, he did say he was on a quote-unquote rampage. Who knew UFC fighters had such exciting lives? Bisping and O'Malley also had a discussion about who he'd possibly fight next, and while the majority of the fight world wants it to be between him and Aljamain Sterling, the 28-year-old thinks it'll be different. Sean thinks Henry might just be able to subdue the champion via submission, and we know what you're thinking right now. Sterling is an active champion, while Meanwhile, Cejudo is coming off a long break, but who knows how hard he's been training for this comeback. And with the title on the line, Henry isn't the one to waste such opportunities. O'Malley also got a little personal and said Henry mostly looked fat and drunk during the last few fights of his career, so it's a bit doubtful whether he'll be able to make a successful comeback. Last but not least, just another month of relaxation. O'Malley has been growing frustrated because of Aljo's decision to take some time off, and while he's totally allowed to do that, let's not forget he's a UFC champion, and he's literally holding up an entire division right now. But the champ recently shared an update on his Twitter account and said he'd only be out for another month before he hits the camp and gets ready to smash Henry and retain his title. It's good news for Sean, since he'll finally have a clearer idea of who he's going to be fighting next. He's still a little confused about the Marlon Vera fight, but we reckon he should just get another stem cell treatment to pass the time. That's it from our side, folks. So what do you think? Does Islam Makhachev have an unfair advantage because of his childhood training? Let us know in the comments below. Remember, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more interesting videos in the future. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.